morning and welcome to today's webinar, JD Edwards Upgrade Planning, Integration Best Practices. My name is Glenn Johnson, a Senior Vice President here at Magic Software Enterprises, and I'm joined today by Ryan Beck, a Senior Consultant at Magic Software. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello again, Glenn.
Hello. Welcome back to any of you who are with us on our previous webinar, and we look forward to continuing to share with you during webinar week here at Magic Software. We are following up with many of you who are at the Quest Collaborate conference, and so we thank you for joining us here today, and we look forward to a useful session. We're focusing today on the topic of JD Edwards upgrade planning. We know that many of you have already upgraded. Some of you are planning to upgrade or considering that upgrade, and we really wanted to talk today about the integration piece because for many, integration is really crucial to user adoption, to satisfaction, and really at the heart of what's important in terms of those kinds of things that will really make the difference on a successful upgrade. And so that's the focus of today's webinar, and we're really happy that you've joined us today. If you have any questions, you can type them in at any time into the chat or questions box, and we'll certainly take time to get to those at the end of today's session. Just a word about Magic Software. Magic Software offers a one-stack technology for JD Edwards users that allows you to leverage both an integration platform and an application platform based on metadata-driven technology. The Magic Xpi Integration Platform for JD Edwards provides you with the ability to connect back-end systems and other enterprise software, e-commerce platforms, websites, mobile devices, and so on. And the Magic Xpi applications platform allows you to create new business functionality, including mobile apps for your JD Edwards users and non-JD Edwards users that are also customers, trading partners, or employees within your organization that don't currently have access to JD Edwards data. So with this one-stack technology, Magic Software is providing an approach that allows customers to really work at an abstracted level, a higher level, so that line-by-line coding and programming is not required. As a result of that, we've been very fortunate that the Magic Integration Platform for JD Edwards is being featured in the 100-day upgrade workshops being conducted by Oracle. We have, for example, at InFocus, all of the Oracle speakers received this slide in their slide deck from Oracle, and it talks about how the Magic Xpi Integration Platform connects JD Edwards to hundreds of different systems. And so you can connect to other Oracle applications, Oracle Edge applications, third-party applications, websites, and so forth in a way that is really exciting to users and becomes very important at upgrade time. Because you're working at the design time of connecting your business processes in a visual way, you're able to drag, drop, and configure your integration flows, and it's code-free. The most complex thing you need to do is probably a function that looks something like an Excel function in an Excel spreadsheet. That's it. Now, as you deploy your integrated applications, you are able to monitor those with a built-in monitor that provides you logging and dashboarding capabilities, all using the same type of visual interface so that it has a very familiar look and feel even in the monitoring environment. And the benefit of that to customers like Mizuno is that they're able to integrate to back-end systems and to customer-facing systems. For example, Mizuno uses Shopatron e-commerce, and wow, when they upgraded, Mizuno's Tim Whitlock, who's the IT and ERP director there, says that Mizuno's e-commerce integration kept running with near zero effort when we upgraded from 8.10 to 9.1. And the Magic Xpi Integration Platform is there to make certain that really all you have to do is simply point to that new JD Edwards system. And so when we talk to Ryan, I'm sure he'll talk to us a little bit more detail about that, but there's not a whole lot that he can really say about it. He'll probably spend a little time to show us some of that, but that's not a big challenge to simply, go into the topology environment and point to the new JD Edwards instance. Bring some of those flows back in and so forth. Well, let's take a step back before we dive into the technical details per se and look at the challenges from an IT management perspective. When we're talking about integration, there are a number of challenges. First of all, the geographic diversity of our organization. A geographically diffuse operational structure creates special challenges for IT. Both the network infrastructure itself and the integration architecture need to take into account distance. And the Internet is a fantastic resource, obviously, for IT, but it also has connectivity issues that wouldn't normally be present within a data center environment. And so our business rules and logic for integration need to consider the geographically diverse nature of our organization, the fact that often in different places we're running different systems for the same essential business function, and there needs to be a way of normalizing all of that into a consistent integration business processes. Challenge number two for integration is typically, the fact that there are multiple business units, as I just kind of implied, and this diversification model that most businesses go through have the need, obviously, to deal with various departmental functions, if you will. And while financial reporting is the key deliverable of an ERP system, there are many other edge functions that are provided through ERP and that serve primarily users in departments outside of finance and accounting. And so a diversified business, which is comprised of multiple subsidiaries, has a lot of IT and operational challenges, and those business units must act and be considered together at times, and that's going to require some integration across those units. Things like consolidation, like intercompany charges, and so forth. So as we look at those multiple business units and the challenges that they require, we're reminded that there are other challenges, like the interrelated business processes that occur between the various enterprise systems that we have in place. And so within a large enterprise, a medium-sized enterprise, you're going to have a diverse application portfolio. Lots of different software, not just one piece of software. And that infrastructure that supports that is often comprised of multiple specialized systems requiring orchestration and loosely coupled architecture in order to achieve an ideal integration and business process scenario. So the fourth challenge is the poor user that doesn't want to interface with 12 different systems in order to accomplish one thing. So they need a simplified and unified interface. They want to work from their primary system. They want to work in a way that allows them to overcome the complexity and basically have that hidden from the user so that they're able to view and interact with a simplified and unified system, the old KISS approach. And fifth, there's a need to really make information meaningful and not just throw data at our users. And so key decision makers and line of business workers need to be able to crystallize the vast arrays of data and metadata into actionable information that's useful and meaningful to them in their various roles. So we see at Magic Software integration as part of the upgrade process. And this view is, I think, shared by the J.D. Edwards teams at Oracle. And so we kind of talk about your need to evaluate, integrate, and upgrade as a best practice approach. And you need to be consulting your internal stakeholders in order to really understand where it is that you want to go. So let's talk about that. What do we do? Well, in the evaluate phase, if you will, we are asking basic questions. Why are we upgrading? We're meeting with the stakeholders. We're doing current state analysis, something not unfamiliar to IT business analysts. Then we're consulting with internal and external resources. Talk to Oracle partners, talk to independent consultants with experience, specifically, of course, in J.D. Edwards. Gather your existing documentation. Review your security policies. Run integrity reports in the organization. It's a matter of figuring out where you're at and where you need to go. Okay, so hold on. I apologize. We seem to be having screen sharing pause. I don't want that. So. Okay. Can you still see my screen there, Ryan?
I do.
Okay.
Looking at PowerPoint.
That's good, but it's not in slideshow mode, right?
It's not.
Okay, so let me get it back in the slideshow mode. There we go. Now you see the evaluate screen, I'm hoping. Okay, good. So basically then, this evaluate phase is one where we've done that current state analysis. But we don't want to overdo it. You can kind of have analysis paralysis where you're just like trying to define every single step. So there's this sort of like midpoint that you need to go to. Look at what's most important first. Correspond your state analysis to the mission and strategy of the organization. Think about purpose and context first, because it's essential to measurement. If we don't know where it is that we want to go, then we don't know what to measure. We want a repeatable framework for measurability of our progress. We want to make sure that our current state analysis corresponds to our IT framework, and we want to be strategic in the way that we go about that, avoiding analysis paralysis and focusing instead on the most important assets first and the least important assets at the end. So our key takeaway here is that your inventory and business architecture, application architecture, and information architecture and technology architecture needs to correspond to the mission and strategies for measurement to be made. It's an iterative process when we're going through analysis. Things change, and so we need to make sure that we're constantly validating what we're discovering in our current state analysis. Focus on assets from the highest to the lowest priority, because our priorities can change mid-analysis and mid-project, and iterate that cycle as needed to keep focused on those changing priorities. We like to talk about it in terms of tiers, and this is, of course, kind of an ISO standard approach from IEEE, where you're talking about Tier 1 core assets, Tier 2 differentiating assets, and Tier 3 operational assets. As you look at these three tiers, then you can look at the systems within those tiers into a manageable number, usually less than 10 in any one of these tiers. For full information, I'm referencing here the IEEE document that really goes into detail on this type of approach, which I would recommend to you at www.iso-architecture.org, IEEE-1471. So that's the document number, IEEE-1471. Now, as you correlate your concerns to stakeholders, this becomes very important, because by correlating your concerns to the stakeholders, you're able to go back to those stakeholders and see how important that concern was to them, so that when people say, well, why are we doing this? Who said that we should do it this way? You've done, in your analysis, some correlation. You'll have tables and charts that say, it's coming from these sources. So, takeaway 2 is that your architecture description should identify stakeholders and their concerns and address the architecture viewpoint that will in turn govern your architectural view. So think about what their perspective is, what their architectural viewpoint is, and why that's important, and then that's going to govern your overall view to how you're describing your current state. Now let's talk about integration. The next phase, if you will, of the upgrade portion of an integration project is going to be the integration itself. You need to use integration architecture that will span versions of J.D. Edwards, and this is something that cannot be provided by those versions themselves. So you need a flexible middleware approach that uses loosely coupled service-oriented architecture where there's no programming involved. You don't have to do Java programming or anything like that. We don't even deliver Java tools to our customers because they don't need them. You integrate current state, you evaluate process improvements that need to be made, and you need to be very specific about integration in your upgrade plan. So integration patterns that take place in the integration phase are going to break out into a number of areas: the data integration patterns, the functional integration patterns, the process integration patterns, and the presentation layer integration patterns that are taking place. So we can think about it in those terms, and then keeping in mind that there is sort of this need for balancing forces, where There are machine boundaries that are important. Is the idea that you can just take a J.D. Edwards business function interface and extend it across machine boundaries to create location transparency is flawed. It just doesn't happen that way. We commonly hear people say, well, we have business functions. Why do we need an integration platform? In a way, it's kind of a logical question, because you expose the information, but how do you then transform it? How do you deal with the third-party system? What's going to interface it, even if it has its own API? And so these machine boundaries are there even when they have an API, which exposes the information and processes that are available from those systems. Coupling affects the interoperability of these systems. You need to be able to integrate the logical business layer and involve the sharing of functionality in doing that. So sharing functionality implies that there's some level of coupling between the consumer and the provider of the functionality. So there are various approaches to this. One is temporal coupling, which is synchronous. Another is dependency coupling. And in dependency coupling, this is going to occur when one executable depends on the other executable to run. And then third, there's loose coupling. Star pupil, loose coupling. Very good. Why? Well, loose coupling occurs when an intermediate broker maintains coupling independently of the source and the destination. So the sources and destinations can change in an upgrade, for example, and therefore the integration keeps working. This is why loose coupling is so highly touted by Gartner analysts, Forrester analysts, and others who look at service-oriented architecture as really depending upon, at its core, this concept. Now, coupling and interface definition languages are very important because every system provides its IDL. BSFN, business functions, are basically an interface definition language for J.D. Edwards, for example. Coupling and message-oriented middleware, are part of those balancing forces. You're going to get that in some systems. You're going to have portable type systems, XML. Basically, Magic's Xpi Integration Platform is heavily dependent upon XML internally in order to maintain its operational data store and so forth. And you have, of course, the need to really have a service level agreement and understanding of what is happening. And that comes, in the case of Magic Xpi, through that monitor where you can see the latency of the business processes. You can see if an error has occurred or how many errors have occurred in particular business functions and so forth. So all of this is kind of tied up in this idea of the balancing forces of the integration. When you get to the detailed level, conceptually at least, it's a question of synchronous or asynchronous often. And what's interesting about this is that sometimes synchronous and asynchronous sort of get blended, where you can actually have multiple synchronous processes that are simulating asynchronous behavior. So if you look at it at an atomic level, you might say this is synchronous. But if you look at it at a higher level, you can say this is an asynchronous process. And and in reality, that's typically what's going on in business integration flows. Data integration approaches are really not recommended or approved at the database level. Using Z processes or functions, business functions, is what's recommended. So realistically, sometimes it's necessary to have a shared database to maintain data copies, to execute file transfers. But whenever possible, of course, you're going to use Z processes and business functions because they enforce the J.D. Edwards business logic. They do the validations. And that's why Magic Xpi Integration Platform uses Z processes and business functions and allows you to automate your design and, of course, automate the runtime execution of those business functions. You need to consider latency, push versus pull, granularity, master and subordinate relationships, and synchronization logic versus latency as you look at data integration. And this is something that, as we said, typically you're going to want to avoid direct SQL integration. So key number 3, stay away from the database. Use the business function whenever possible. There are problems when you do direct SQL integration. First of all, there are unpublished schemas. Most packaged applications, not just J.D. Edwards, consider the database schema to be unpublished and changeable. So even though you might have information about most of the tables in J.D. Edwards, there are some things that you don't know about. there's bypass business logic that can occur. There's direct data integration, which bypasses most of the business logic and validation rules incorporated into the application logic. There's no encapsulation, so the data that's extracted is represented in the format of an application internal physical database schema. And it's different from application to application, obviously. So this data very likely has to be transformed before other applications can use it. Most of us as IT users understand this intuitively. But the problem can come because of simplistic semantics. In other words, when we go to do that data transformation, we're looking at semantics that provide no functional understanding of what that field is, what the purpose of that data is. And so doing direct SQL integration can be very dangerous. We don't know what we're doing in many instances. And so different storage paradigms can also be a problem. The relational database management systems that we use, flat files versus object-oriented paradigms, also can result in leading towards problems with semantic dissonance, where there's simply not a one-to-one relationship between these schemas that we're dealing with. And so having an intermediary to help us transform and manage those can be very important, whereas direct SQL integration can be very dangerous. So a few things then as we look at the upgrade process itself. Upgrade tips, if you will. Defrag and reorder the database. Use archive capabilities to remove unneeded data and documents. I mean, I certainly recommend that you look at our friends at ArcTools, for example, to look at how you can archive and purge your JD Edwards database prior to your upgrade. And you need to, of course, also look at the human factor of your upgrade, training the technical staff in the new version so that they can really be the leaders in the upgrade process when your users have questions. Prepare the go-live checklist. Make sure you have, obviously, that whole process in mind. And use tools like Safety Checker, Visual Compare, experience counts. Go to those consultants. I'm certainly not an upgrade consultant myself. At Magic, we have these upgrade consultants that we work with that are, experienced JD Edwards experts, and certainly we're happy to recommend them as part of your upgrade project from Magic Software. So key number 4 would be to include an integration architecture tune-up in your upgrade plan. Smooth integration is essential to user acceptance of the new version. Now, Oracle talks about this as well. When you look at the Oracle upgrade project lifecycle, they talk about the importance of retrofitting custom modifications, retrofitting interfaces or integrations, if you will, as part of that configure phase of the upgrade project lifecycle. So it's right there in the middle from Oracle's standpoint. When they talk about the team, they talk about developers that are part of the upgrade team in Oracle's view. And so this leads us to the question is, well, what are the additional steps that we need to pursue? Well, you need to prepare your organization, ensure the quality of your data, minimize application data that needs to be upgraded by archiving and purging, as we suggested, defragging, reorganizing that database, running those integrity reports, such as the company's imbalance integrity report, the DBA integrity report, and the item ledger account integrity report. Make sure you implement the most current tools, releases, and patches. Leverage your existing test scripts and plans. Test with a copy of the production database. Turn off database triggers, and perform your index management. Keeping these ideas in mind is just going to help in that upgrade process. If that's not clear to you, then you probably want a consultant, to really guide you through this process, because that JD Edwards upgrade consultant will help you understand, what these your key tips are about and how to best implement them. So Magic fits into that picture by offering our integration platform, the Magic Xpi Integration Platform, with all of these pre-built adapters and resources, which Ryan's going to talk about in his demonstration, that allow you to create and visualize integration rather than having to program it, and allow you to extend the capabilities of JD Edwards in a way that simplifies the development and maintenance of the integration to these third-party applications. Very powerful, very popular in the JD Edwards community. We're quite proud and pleased of the response that we've received from our customers to this visual approach, which Ryan's going to show you in just a moment, that allows you to make the selections that you want to make and streamline complexity. Xbi Integration Platform from Magic Software manages business processes. It has all of these adapters and connectors. They're reusable. They're scalable from up to carrier class requirements and easy to use. So the data mapping that you'll see in a moment looks something like this, and it's very exciting. The ability to be able to visually transform your data rather than having to resort to programming. Much better approach than the direct SQL integration, as we suggested, and allows you to clearly monitor activities here. With online monitoring, user messages, BAM messages, business activity monitoring. You can see statistics and performance about your integration processes as they're running and at the kinds of intervals that are making sense to you. So the good news from an integration standpoint is that the integration migrates at the topology level. And I think Ryan will probably explain that a little bit. But the differentiators that we want to have you leave as takeaways are that Magic Xpi provides Oracle validated integration. We've gone through the process of that certification process from Magic Xpi. We provide Enterprise One and World adapters. We have a real-time and event-driven architecture. We offer enterprise class scalability. There's no Java programming required, and there's no need to buy multiple middleware products. We're not going to be coming back with another middleware product that provides a service bus, another middleware product that provides BPEL, and another middleware product that provides data integration. It's one platform, and I think that is right-sized for most of your IT organizations rather than having to learn 10 to 12 pieces of the middleware puzzle. The key enterprise differentiators for Magic Xpi come in the fact that that adapter library includes all of the technology adapters for one low cost, and then you just specify your application adapter on top of that. It gives you that visual approach for dragging and dropping. Debugging is built in so that you can easily see variables and the results step by step. Monitoring is built in based on that unified technology stack, and it's based on open standards. It's not averse to working with .NET applications. It's not averse to working with Java applications, COBOL, RPG. All of that can be worked with in a very friendly manner to the point that we can actually call RPG programs, pass parameters, and so forth. We can work with the iSeries and so on. So we mentioned some of these customers like Mizuno, like Toto, that have done these upgrades, that have really benefited from what can happen when you're upgrading from World, for example, 7.3 to the 9. So what we're going to do at this point is pass things back over to Ryan.
And what I'm going to do is actually show you a live demonstration of integrating an application to JDE. And we're going to use two different versions to show you how easily you can actually move your integration from an old version of JDE to a new version, or keep it or basically even possibly keep your integration exactly the same and just have it work on the new version of JDE.
Okay, Ryan, I'm going to make you the presenter, so I think you should be able to share with us now. And we'll be able to see Ryan's desktop for what he's about to show us. And I now see your desktop, so we're in good shape.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So I'm logged into our demo server, and I'm just go around and close some things I had open. And I'm going to go ahead and log into actually Salesforce. Salesforce will be our sample application today that we're going to integrate into JDE. Actually, we're going to start out taking this to a bit of an extreme. We're going to log into an old version of JDE. I'm going to go into, some of you probably know what this is. This is a green screen. And I'm going into actually E1. We have a couple different, or I'm sorry, going into World. I have a couple different platforms we can use. I'm going to go into 8.1. And I'm going to go ahead and go into Address Book Management and see if we have anyone in here. And I obviously am not very creative, so I'm going to look for Glenn again, which I just did in the last demo. And we don't have a Glenn. So I'm going to create him in Salesforce, and then we're going to have it sync over. And the way I'm going to do that is just go to our accounts, and I'm going to click the New button, and we'll put in Johnson. There we go. And actually, in here, I'm going to choose this drop-down for demonstration purposes. Obviously, your users wouldn't have this, but it works great for the demo. I'm going to set this to World, because that's where I want to steer this to go. And we'll put in an address. Why not? Okay, so after I save this, what's going to happen is that Magic XPI is sitting in the background between Salesforce and JDE. It has what's called a Salesforce Trigger. You don't need to know much about it, but basically it just knows that something changed in Salesforce and it needs to do something. It's an integration engine. It's an orchestration engine. So what happens is it knows that this record was created in Salesforce. It will launch what's called an integration flow that will connect the two systems in a logical way that we've defined. And I'll show you a bit how we do that. But basically, if you'll notice, it was created by me at 11:32 a.m. local here. And if I refresh it after a couple seconds, just based on whenever it catches it, we'll then see that it actually is going to call JDE and be updated. And I think it's on like a 1-minute polling interval, so sometimes it goes right away, sometimes it takes the full minute. But what it'll do is it's going to, in this case, since it's World, it's going to, instead of call business functions, it's actually going to use a Z-table function. It's going to save everything to the Z-table. It will then actually call a batch process, which is a Z-table process, to get it all the way to JDE on an AS400, and then bring me back the number. So even though the process is supposedly asynchronous because I'm working with World, right? The reality is it creates a synchronous process. I created Glenn here in Salesforce, and then a minute later I've got an account ID from JDE World. So I could have been in around the world anywhere creating this account in Salesforce. It got all the way back to my enterprise system here in our office, and you can see it was done here by Magic XPI's integration engine within 1 minute. So, like I said, although it's asynchronous, you're not really losing anything because you can actually do this. Now, obviously, you probably want to see what this looks like on this side. So I come back, hit OK. We can go into this one, and we can see Glenn. So, and also you'll see up at the top, this is this long address book number is the Salesforce unique ID, and then you've got the same account number in World, and it was brought back to Salesforce. Now, what if I wanted to do this to E1? Well, I could do the same thing. I'm just going to switch tabs in my browser real quick and go into E1 and look for the same record and see if it's out there. Nothing. All right. So then I'm going to come into Salesforce, and just for the sake of timing, I'm just going to go ahead and erase this address book number, and I'm going to change this drop down to go to E1. And what's going to happen is it's going to run the same process again, but based on this parameter here, it's going to steer it another way. Now, obviously, this is not something you would give your end users. Maybe you would want to. I don't know, but you could. But obviously, this would be some sort of parameter in the background that you have on your server. And then what will happen is once it realizes I updated this record and it's a new one because it has no address book number, it's going to go ahead and steer it into E1. Now this time it's going to call business functions. Now we could have left the integration the same, and we could have called Z-table functions in E1, I'm sure, but and because typically things don't get depreciated as you upgrade, right? As you go from JDE, we're on 8.12 here, or as I upgraded to 9.0, or as I upgraded to 9.1. Things don't necessarily get depreciated. You get new capabilities for sure, but the business functions are still going to be there. The Z-table will still be there. Now you'll see I have an account number here. It's a different series because it's that's just where my E1 environment's at. It has less stuff in it, and you can see it was updated by Magic XPI again at that time. Now if I go back into E1 and refresh, you'll see here it is. It came in. Remember, this got in through calling business functions on this system, and there's all the information on this side. So we've got this in we got this into E1 and we got this into world just by simply specifying a parameter. Where do we want it to go? So you're probably thinking, well, Ryan, that's cool and looks great, but how easy is that really to do? And the answer is it's a lot easier than you're thinking. I'm going to go under the hood a bit and show you Magic Xpi Studio. So while the integration itself, when you deploy it, is transparent, it doesn't have a user interface, it just runs in the background and does its thing without anybody needing to tell it what to do as a transparent integration engine. You actually do have an interface. This is it on my screen right now. This is what's called the Magic Xpi Studio. It's made up of a bunch of visual components that you can use to create what are called flows. And a flow is exactly what we ran earlier. It was a connection between two or more systems, right? So this flow here is set to receive stuff from a Salesforce Trigger, which wants to know whenever something changes in Salesforce. And then it calls iterations of this flow once for every record in Salesforce that met the criteria. And first thing it's going to do here is it's going to make a decision whether to go down the left and call Enterprise 1 and then handle the response and go back to Salesforce, or it's going to call world using our world adapter and using our system I adapter, and basically end the same way, going back to Salesforce. So this shows you how quickly how easily really you can actually do this. So for instance, if I want to work with E1, I would just drag the connector over, drop it off flow, say OK, and then I have a new adapter there. So the next time the server ran through, if I deployed it, it would run that. And it's all wizard-driven configuration. I just right-click it and tell it what do I want to do. I can search for business functions with addresses or sales orders or things like that. It'll search through and find the ones I want. So if I wanted to work with these tables like that, I can. Also, if you wanted to browse by module, you could. So I have another button here. It's going to log into my E1 environment, and it's going to go ahead and grab all the different modules available in E1. So if I was to work with, let's just say, like, I do sales orders a lot, so we can show you how we can work with adding text on a sales order or editing a sales order. You kind of pick the module you want, you open it up, you say OK, and what it'll do is it's going to log in and grab all the parameters for that business function, and then go ahead and be able to display them in what's called a data mapper, and so I can use them. So what will happen is this business function is now here on the right, showing me all the functions that are all the parameters that are required to pass into, say, in this case, insert text into a sales order. And then I see all the parameters coming in. I'll also see all the parameters coming back out. So these are where I will get a response from JDE that tells me if I succeeded or not, based on the description and the text and the level of whether or not it works. I'll know actually if there was a validation error. So because we're calling the business functions, all of the data validation, it's basically being done by the business function. You can obviously pre-validate, of course, in Magic, but we are getting in through an Oracle sanctioned API. This is not some just kludgy database insert and call a trigger, who knows what. This is a loosely coupled integration. We're calling the correct API. That means that if you upgrade your JDE from 8.10 to 8.12 to 9.0 to 9.1, the integration should basically just keep working. Now, if you want to take advantage of more fields, yeah, you might need to go back and modify it and do, maybe you want to take advantage of some new UDFs or a new document or something like that. Sure, you've got to go add that in, but the existing integration should just keep working fine. That's the beauty of the adapter logic. These adapters worry about all of the connectivity behind the scenes, how to connect to JDE, all your versioning. Like this one will know how to connect to E1. This will know how to connect to World. It doesn't have to be told beyond a little bit of parameters how to find a server and how to log into JDE. All that's handled in a library. Similar to in other languages, if you wanted to use, I don't know, if you wanted to make a PDF, you could go into C or .NET or PHP and get a library to make PDFs instead of trying to research from the ground up how to do that. same concept, but it's more visual. It's more enterprisey. It's basically an easier way to create integrations. As I expand my screen here a little bit, tell Windows Updates to go away. I will show you all the different adapters that we have available and kind of talk just a bit about them. If you want more in-depth on any of them, please contact us. We're sure to tell you what we can do. We have adapters that work with .NET services, of course. We have a directory scanner. The directory scanner will just go ahead and be able to watch a folder for an incoming file. So if you have a process that exists that drops a file somewhere, like maybe it's an EDI thing, maybe it's a scheduled batch, we can run a flow based on that. So we see the file drop and we run. The data mapper is a pretty useful tool. It's pretty ubiquitous all over. The data mapper will work with any type of database out there typically. We have native adapters for Oracle, MS SQL, Pervasive, DB2, DB2 and we can also reach anything that has ODBC that's compliant. So it's basically a Swiss knife there. We'll also work with flat files, positional, whatnot, as well as XML, internal data queues, all kinds of things. Also, we can work with email, of course. We have a couple different email components. There's a generic email like IMAP, POP3, SMTP, as well as actually, you probably noticed, there's an exchange component as well as a domino component for those of you that are masochists, as well as Google Docs and things like that. Sorry. And then there's, of course, the JD components we talked about, as well as working with LDAP and other technology generic things like HTTP, FTP. So you can move, if you have a platform that we don't have a component for, it doesn't mean we can't work with it. It just means we didn't need to go out and do all the work to write a component because it's probably very simple to integrate with. So working with HTTP, working with databases, working with web services, working with the other types of interfaces. A lot of our components are generic enough to basically work with anything. And of course, you'll also see other vertical markets we're in, like SAP, Salesforce, and SharePoint. But there's just a lot of adapters in here that can do basically anything. XPI sort of becomes the Swiss knife of integration. So any integration we come across, it's certainly the tool we use. Behind the scenes, remember I told you the Magic XPI server is completely once you've created your project and you've deployed it, it takes like literally 3 seconds to deploy. It's like a button you push. Once you've done that, it runs transparently as a Windows service. It runs on your own VM and on-premise at your environment. It sort of just sits there and connects to all your systems and orchestrates the integration between them. So it's transparent. All you really see is something running in Service Manager. But we do have a tool called the Magic XPI Monitor that allows you to see what your projects are doing. So right now I'm looking at, I have 2 projects running. I got an Agile Point demo. You see that's green. And I got the Collaborate 13 demo, which is the one we just did right now. It's the same demo we ran at the Collaborate for any of you that were there in Denver. And these are the 2 that are running now, and I can see what they're doing. I can see that they're sitting idle. I can see how hard they've worked in the past, how many threads they're using now. It is a multi-threaded environment, so both these projects are running in parallel in their own little different world. They don't really care what each other are doing. But also within each project, each flow can be running in parallel, or different instances of the same flow. So it's a multi-threaded environment. If you've got a lot of servers with a lot of processors, it'll certainly take advantage of that. In that when one process starts, it doesn't slow down another. Here I can see also my projects that are stopped. Maybe you have other projects that aren't running, but I can drill into one. By the way, the beauty of this is that the tool is very reusable. So once you've done an integration, say you had a driving reason, we need to put in XPI, so we got to do this project that just connects something. If you have other needs in the future that come up, you don't have to go back and rewrite that project. You can add another one to your server. It goes on as a little, in its own executable, its own project. So it's managed separately. You don't have to worry about re-QAing your old code. You don't have to worry about turning one off and it affecting the other. They run in their own little projects and on the same server. It's a very modular, bolt-on environment. I'm going to drill into the Collaborate project that we just ran, and you're actually going to see a little bit of stuff that's familiar here, because in here I'm looking at my flows here, but I'm going to go ahead and change this. I want to see only the stuff that ran through. So you'll see things that came through, such as the world and enterprise messages that ran through here. This was the world thing we did. And then about 2 minutes later, we ran the enterprise one. And then we can look for errors, or we can look for any time a project starts and stops. I'm going to switch to another project that we chose to log more information in. It's the one we actually ran in the last webinar a couple minutes ago, and see if it has any data. And we didn't log anything in. But the idea is that you can actually go in and see messaging after it happens. So if, for instance, like someone asks, hey, we sent a transaction across XPI, yesterday, and what happened to it? You can actually go in and investigate and see it right in here in the monitor, without having to go and recreate it to find out what happened. So it's a very useful tool in development, and also once you get to a live environment as well. I'll show you real quick how we connect to JDE, since it's JDE focused. In Magic XPI, we have what are called resources, and resources are a consolidated place where we have all of the credentials that we would go out and log into other systems. So in here, I have my E1 credentials. So I have my server, I have my environment, my user and password, and I can validate it and see if it works. And I logged into JDE. Obviously, I could change this and have it fail. But the idea here is that all of this is essentially managed. Instead of having code, your credentials buried in your code or somewhere in a file where they can be read, this is actually encrypted here. I cannot tell you what this password is, besides the fact that I just happen to know what it is behind the asterisk. It creates a simple way to maintain all of these. So this can be managed by your IT staff instead of by your developers. So instead of having the old DevOps where you have developers managing your servers, this is a very, very easy way that your, say, your SharePoint admin or your JDE admin can come in and change the credentials, say OK, and your project will keep working. They didn't have to go into your project to actually do it, which is nice.
So if we upgraded then from 8.12 to 9.1, is this where we would be looking to sort of point to the new resources?
Exactly. So you would come in here, you'd give it the new server information, maybe you'd change the environment because we probably want to do some testing first or whatnot. So this is where you would come in and change the credentials to the new system and test it out and whatnot. So yeah, same thing with, say, like a SharePoint or a database is you'll have, say, my DB2 credentials here. You'll have maybe some SQL credentials here. It's basically organized very well so that everything is focused in one place. And then, of course, here's my Salesforce credentials here. And you'll see, actually, you can have multiple connections. So say you wanted to connect JDE to JDE, like maybe, I don't know, maybe you have an integration one. You could have multiple JDE environments involved in the same integration. So I can say go and plug in a different JDE environment here, and maybe you want to move TOs from one platform to orders in another, or something like that. You can do that very, very easily with the tool because it will connect to both environments simultaneously. Glenn, maybe you want to, we're getting down to like about 10 minutes left. Maybe we want to look and see if there's any questions available.
Yeah, if you have a question, please go ahead and type it into the chat or the questions box at this point. And Ryan will be happy to give you an answer to any questions that you might have. So go ahead and just take a moment to enter that in, and then we'll try to answer your questions. While they're doing that, Ryan, I do have a question. You mentioned the data queues, and I'm just wondering if you could highlight a little bit for any of our IBMI users that are out there some of the capabilities of the SystemI component.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we went over a little bit before, I kind of touched on it, we were able to call Z-table functions in World. And the reason we can do that is we do have very tight connectivity with the IBM iSeries. It's kind of our history a bit. And we can actually call, we actually have a library that runs on the iSeries that we can call from XPI. So in doing that, if I drag the SystemI adapter over and throw it over here, I can go into it, and I can look at the capabilities of it. So, for instance, I can run programs on there. So that could be COBOL, RPG, and CL, and also I can work with data queues. And this, you can see this programs can pass parameters in and out. So if you need to do something, you certainly can. You can work with the IFS directory structure. You can get files on and off the server, of course. And you can also work with user queues, spool files, calling arbitrary commands on the system, and basically be able to work with very tight integration. I'll show you an example of what we ran earlier during the demo. After the world's component completed, we actually used the system I component to do for you I-Series guys, you'll notice this right away, we changed the library to give it the libraries required for JDE. And then we ran a program that would give us the Z-table function that would then take data out of our Z-table and get it into the real internal JDE tables. So we were able to get data all the way to JDE by doing a two-step process here, where we worked with the world adapter to get data into JDE, and then we go ahead and call the RPG function, and that gives us basically a real-time integration with JDE without having an API that provides the real-time integration. We create that through Xpi, and in this case, we could even expose that as as a REST-based web service, like we did in the last demo. We can throw an HTTP trigger up here, and something can call that and pass us data, and it would work. So you'd get, it'd basically even be in a way adding web services to World, 8.7 or 8, or old versions of World. So in doing that, we created a lot of new functionality that wouldn't exist just in JDE.
All right, Ryan, I have a question coming in here from our friend Manuel Rodrigo Silva, who is asking us a question about the Java Dynamic Connector and whether there is documentation on how to set up the Java Dynamic Connector on the E1 side if we have that available.
Yeah, there certainly is. Actually, I will show you. We have a site out there called DevNet, which is the Magic XPI and XPA resource for our users. And if you look for DevNet Magic JDE, I think, you'll probably see, of course, all of Glenn's, you'll see all of Glenn's blogs, articles, but if you Google it, it'll come up and you actually can find the prerequisites. So you'll see the prerequisites that we require for this. Also, we'll go a bit into, let's see here. I'm going to back up. It's actually, I think I'm going to look for JDE prereq. And go. And this will show you exactly what you need to do. It's not a whole lot. You need to get, it takes just a little bit of time. You need to grab a bunch of jar files off your server or your FAT client. And then you need to create a couple of XML files. But basically, here it is right here. And I can even put this link here in the chat, I think, for the people that were asking. So I just did a send to chat. This is the configuration for this, and you can see depending on what version of JDE you have. If you have like 8.10 or 8.11, you have like a couple jar files to grab. 8.12 or newer, you can see that there's a lot more. There's just more stuff you can do. But so you grab those. There's some INI files to set up, and basically you're off and running, and you're able to call JDE from Magic XPI. And that gets you right into business functions. So you are able to call business functions directly from outside JDE.
Fantastic. I just wanted to take a moment, actually, at this point, Ryan, to go back. So I'm going to see if I can make myself the presenter again. Thank you for those questions. I wanted to remind everyone that we have a very important conference coming up for our J.D. Edwards users, and that's the Magic Software Users Conference. which you're all invited. The Magic Software Users Conference is going to be held at the Encore at the Wynn, Las Vegas. Those of you who know this property know that it is a premier property. And the Encore at the Wynn, we're going to be there from June 3rd to the 6th. We're going to have 3 days of Magic XPI for J.D. Edwards Education. You can get rooms there at the group rate of $149 a night. The conference rate for registration is $595. So 3 days of education at a really incredible value in a fantastic location. And what we're doing there is amazing. The first half day will be in general sessions with CEO of Magic Software, Ray Keeve, the VP of Product Management and Community for Magic Software, Yuval Ashari. And then we'll really be getting directly into Magic XPI, where Yuval will actually be talking about big data, the new in-memory data grid capabilities of Magic XPI. We'll have sessions on how to extend ERP data and functionality into mobile apps, how to work with an example. For example, we'll be talking about the Cleveland Golf Story, the iPad sales catalogs that they have created. We'll be talking about workshops on day 2. So in these hands-on workshops, we'll really be getting into how to develop with the Magic XPI Studio. What are the ways that we can work with advanced data mapper techniques? How can we optimize our Magic XPI projects? How can we work with a system like SharePoint for business-critical SharePoint integration? And then on the final day, we're going to be relying on a host of experts from the J.D. Edwards community to really bring us our users valuable information. Darrell Juvenile Group's integration case study, sessions on what every IT manager needs to know about J.D. Edwards itself, sessions on the case study from Toto USA, and then really excited to have members of the JDE Alliance sharing with us on what every IT manager needs to know about J.D. Edwards reporting and analytics, AP automation and logistics, and what every IT manager needs to know about J.D. Edwards security, archive and purge, and hosting, and then for good measure, another session on how to build a better J.D. Edwards mobile app. So hopefully, the early June is not when you're going through your upgrades. You'll actually be able to attend this conference. It's sort of a, I won't say once in a lifetime, but once a year kind of opportunity to really get this level of interaction with colleagues, networking, meeting people who are using Magic XPI as a vital part of their solutions in their IT environments, and it should be just a great experience for all of us. So we certainly want to use this final seconds to invite you to that, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. We hope to see you again here on Webinar Week as we continue. Just check the Magic Software website at magicsoftware.com/webinars, and you'll see what's coming up on tomorrow and Thursday as we continue Magic Webinar Week. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much, Ryan. Great job.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all later.